It is now time for our second panel that will discuss the scope and challenges of the NIPUN Bharat Mission. I would like to invite our panelists. First, we have Dr. Rukmini Banerjee, Chief Executive Officer, Pratham Education Foundation. Rukmini Banerjee was trained as an economist at St. Stephen's College and the Delhi School of Economics. She was a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford and has a PhD from the University of Chicago. Over the years, she has worked extensively in Pratham's education programs in rural and urban areas. Along with her teams, she has played a vital role in designing and supporting large-scale partnerships with state governments in India for improving children's learning outcomes. Dr. Rukmini has led Pratham's research and assessment efforts, including the annual Status of Education report. She's a long-standing friend and supporter of LLF. Dr. Rukmini will be also moderating the panel. Next, we have Mr. Manish Garg, Joint Secretary, School Education, Government of India. Mr. Manish Garg is a 1996 batch IS officer of Himachal Pradesh cadre. He holds a BTech degree in Electrical Engineering from IIT Delhi and a master's degree from King's College London. He was earlier secretary in Himachal Pradesh government and has been associated with the Ministry of Education, Government of India for the past 5 years and has played a key role in numerous initiatives by the ministry over the years. He has led various aspects of the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan and has ensured close coordination of the ministry with the states. Next, we have Ms. Sanisha Ahuja. With more than 25 years of experience in the education sector, Ms. Sanisha has been currently working as the Education Specialist, Early Childhood Education, UNICEF India. She has worked with the Ministry of Education and several non-profits, including Mobile Crashes, Care India, and Room to Read. With her educational background in child development, she has worked in the thematic areas of early childhood education, early literacy, and reading promotion in primary grades. She has been advocating for and supporting FLN programs across different states. Ms. Sanisha has worked extensively with LLF for early literacy and multilingual education. Ma'am. Next, we have Ms. Nidhi Pundir, Director Head, HCL Foundation. With more than 23 years of experience in actualizing human rights at the national and global level, Ms. Nidhi shapes and executes programmatic frameworks that are aligned to sustainable development goals for the most disadvantaged and isolated communities, including environmental targets. She leads HCL's flagship global CSR policy, which pioneers around 10 commandments of CSR. She has built the HCL Foundation's vision, mission, and strategy, ensuring high-quality program delivery that brings about the meaningful difference on the ground. Ma'am. And finally, we have Mr. Ujjwal Banerjee, Senior Program Manager, Education, HT Parekh Foundation. Mr. Ujjwal has been working in the space of education for close to 15 years now after transitioning from the corporate sector. Prior to joining HT Parekh Foundation as Senior Program Manager, his education practice with diverse organizations, including Tata Trust, involved efforts in the areas of advising private schools, teacher professional development, and leading the implementation of medium-scale education programs for early childhood and primary grades in rural Gujarat. Ujjwal is providing strategic guidance to LLF's initiatives in Chhattisgarh. Thank you. I would now hand over to Dr. Rukmini, who will take the conversation forward.
Thank you so much. First of all, I was told this is a birthday party. And फिर गलती से हम लोगों से ना बड़े serious बातें कराने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. But it's after 7 o'clock, Dhir, so you will allow us the liberty to have a conversation. I'm sure we'll have a very good conversation. And I was just thinking, and as I was thinking this, I found that Vrinda has walked into the room because the best conversations when she was in Shastri Bhavan also happened around this time when there was no pressure of phone calls and other things. So I'm really looking forward that we can have a good chat. Now, as a good conference administrator, Madhavi has sent lots of questions to us, which we are all prepared with, correct? So we want to assure you that our homework ho chuka hai. But we would like to have, I hope we can have a easy conversation, free-flowing, because at least to have a birthday party, you can't have a very serious conversation. Now you're, I think, 7 years old, right? And I think this has been a very interesting time in India to be 7 years old. Because कई बार birthday party organize हुआ, फिर वो cancel भी हो गया for whatever reason. Right now, many 7-year-olds in India don't know कि वो first में है कि second में है कि third में है. And therefore, I think that it's a very appropriate moment actually to have this discussion also. Things have opened up, everybody is very excited, but कौन से रास्ते से चलेंगे is also being debated. And listening कर रहे हैं हम लोग सब. And I think hopefully we will continue to do so. So what I thought we could do is maybe first round questions, and हम लोग TV भी देखते हैं, so we see how moderators do it on TV, right? I thought in the first round of questions, everybody on the panel is from a different, looking at this whole national effort from a different point of view. Or maybe we are looking at it from the same point of view. Maybe if we just go around and say one or two things that really excite you about where we are today, and one or two things that worry you. Our previous panel has put out quite a few of the challenges. But I think if we look at it just from where we are sitting today, what we see is the next 5 years, and what excites you, why are we all here wanting to talk about this at almost 7:30 in the evening, and what do we worry about? So we'll start with Manish ji because you are leading the effort, and so we'll start with you.
Thank you, Rukmini ji. So Vrinda ma'am is here. So when I joined the Ministry of Education, she was the Secretary Education, and I landed when she was there. So I was fortunate to do that, and just came to know that this is the 7th year of LLF also, and this is also my 7th year in education. So so maybe LLF was almost born around the time that I had also joined the ministry in 2015. So I'm almost completing 7 years now. This is a very good opportunity to actually, and I thank LLF for organizing this workshop on foundational literacy and numeracy. And you talked about what are the things that excite me and what are the challenges I feel are there. So, of course, the things that I think it is very exciting that we are having this discussion, first of all, that foundational literacy and numeracy, and especially the NIPUN Bharat mission, which we had launched, has gained a lot of traction across the country. And people are talking about it, discussing it, and discussing about the strategies to implement the developmental goals that have been set out in the NIPUN Bharat guidelines. They have been well received across all sectors and across all stakeholders. And the unique thing is that for the first time we have spelled out some lakshyas or the targets in school education, that this is what we are targeting to achieve. So besides the learning outcomes or the developmental goals, which have been also been codified for the very first time, right from the preschool 1 to up to class 3. So the developmental goals have been identified, the competencies have been identified, and the learning outcomes have been codified. And they run in a very logical kind of progression, all the learning outcomes, and have been mapped to the competencies and the developmental goals. So I think this kind of a framework has given us a very strong footing of this foundational literacy and numeracy. And this is a good launching point for us, because normally when the schemes are launched or missions are launched, and then we start developing the guidelines or the framework, but here everything was done beforehand, and then the mission was launched. And along with the launch of the mission, we have also formulated a kind of a complete implementation of it is not a theoretical kind of a framework only, it is a implementable and implementable kind of a framework, where the entire roles and responsibilities of each stakeholder has been spelled out. The entire administrative structure has been spelled out or created wherever required. So I think it is very interesting that we are at this stage, and important thing is we have set a target also in respect of the year which we are going to achieve it. So 2026 is what we have said, but It is good to see that there is a competition among the states, that Haryana is saying we'll do it by 2024. UP has also moved ahead. So many states have gone ahead, and they are actually, there is some kind of a competition has been generated for achieving this target, which is really very exciting, that we are having this kind of a competition in school education among the states to do better than each other. And the progress is going to be measured on some objective criteria rather than anyone's opinions for measuring the outcomes. So I think that is very interesting. Of course, when we look at such a huge country and a huge mission like this, there will be challenges, as has been enumerated by other speakers. And the of course, the main challenge is to take it to the grassroots, and to take it to every household, every parent, and to have that kind of outreach, that everyone is aware of the Nipun Bharat Lakshyas, and everyone is talking about those Lakshyas. And the parents specifically should be aware what is to be done and what their children are supposed to achieve at different levels. So I think that is the real challenge, and so the orientation of the entire system, the enabling environment has to be created, and even more important is that it has to be sustainable. So it's not as if that in 2024 or 2025 this idea is going to go away, or we will be stopped doing anything for the foundational literacy, but it should become a part of the system, and the systemic reform has to be there, so that it is a sustainable thing. It's not, we are not targeting that particular cohort of children who are presently in Balvatika. So after 3 years, they will be in grade 3, and then we will measure in grade 3 and say that this target has been achieved. That is not the idea. It is the idea that whatever we are doing should be sustainable, and all future generations of the children grow when they have passed out through that system, automatically achieve the foundational literacy and numeracy. So I think that is the real objective and challenge also of this mission. Thank you.
I think like many other organizations, we also are beginning to operate face to face. So पिछले हफ्ते हमारे पूरे प्रथम की leadership group इकट्ठे आई थी, and the highlight of our meeting was a quiz. It was called Fun with Nipun. And even our accountants were wanting to score very high on it, because quiz होता है तो उसमें definitely high marks होने चाहिए. So I think this point that how do we create an environment जहाँ पे सबको पता हो कि कौन से लक्ष्य हैं और हम कैसे पहुंचे, is truly a challenge, and I think also an opportunity. Sunisha, for you have been, I think your whole career has been on what could be called Nipun today. You've been working on for many years on different parts of this continuum. So as we reach the point that we are at today, what do you see as the most exciting thing, which you hadn't seen before, even though Vrindaji is sitting right in front of you? And what worries you about what lies ahead?
You know, is this working? Yeah, okay, thank you. You know, I'm sitting on that chair where Pradeep ji was sitting, and there is a certain energy here, and I'm like, have I to replicate the energy with which he was talking about it? But I think to start with, the one thing that I'm really excited about, and when we got the formal document of Nipun Bharat, was this whole element of the continuum and recognizing that children 3 to 6 years is the beginning of laying down those foundations. And to me, I think that was really heartening to see. That we are recognizing that we need to work with that age group of children, and if we don't, then achieving the goals of Nipun Bharat at the end of grade 3 are not really going to be, we're not really going to realize those goals. So I'm very optimistic. While we are making very small step progress towards it in different states, I am optimistic that by 2026-27, we will have models of, seeing this operationalize, this continuum operationalize in the field. And therefore, I'm also concerned at the same time, given the fact that these two age cohorts really sit with two different ministries, and the modalities of operationalizing the programs is so different. How will that really happen? And I think that's one thing that one is working towards, trying to figure out what are those ways of working together, I think. uh, and I feel here somewhere, the Department of School Education, also perhaps, even though Vrindaji is sitting here and Manish ji is sitting here, I have to say that there is a lot of work that the Ministry of Women and Child Development has done in this area, and perhaps it's time to kind of give them the leadership around this, to learn from what they have done in the last 10 years as post 2013. So that's one of the things. The other thing that I'm concerned about, Rukmini, is yes, it's good to have this long duration vision in mind. We've all been talking about we need a 5-year roadmap. We need to think longer and not look at annual plans, kind of thing. And that's something really fantastic. And I know that the ministries putting together a mechanism by which states are going to be supported in creating those perspective plans. My only worry is, one, there is so much information going to the states, for the states to even process it all to be able to then do it. We know the challenges in the states in terms of capacities. The government institutions have to really work on it. We know the weaknesses there in the institutions. And therefore, in order to what Manishji said, that it's not as if this mission will end in 2026-27. Therefore, we have to embed it within these institutions. How are we going to simultaneously do these things, build, reinvest in the institutions for them to able to take this whole mission forward? I think that's where my biggest concern is.
If I move on to Nidhi ji, from where you are sitting, and as you see, you funded many kinds of projects across many sectors. What is the exciting thing about NIPUN Bharat? And आपके introduction में एक बड़ी interesting चीज़ थी about 10 commandments of CSR. So hopefully NIPUN Bharat meets some of those commandments. But I would love to hear from you, how is HCL looking at the opportunities that you see in what lies ahead?
Thank you so much, I would say, for organizing this, I would say, very pertinent discussion, and also congratulations to the entire LLF team for achieving the 7th year milestone, and Dheerji for, educating us all the time. I see this room is so uniformly distributed in terms of knowledge, and from I see so many people who've been working in this field for many, many years. I mean, committed their lifetime. So NIPUN, I think, is a time to also celebrate for everyone what all of us have been envisioning. Having said that, there are still, when we look at it from CSR perspective, and when so much analysis goes into what is it that we support, what is it that we get engaged in, and when we do our own frameworks, and as you know, how Ministry of Corporate Affairs also has been looking at long term just being 3 years and not 5 years, and there are a lot of challenges that we also have on the table. There are lots of aspects which, having worked in child rights for many years now, which I still feel are important, and somewhere we really need to remember. We're talking about children, we're talking about a child, very young children, we are still talking about grade 3. So, there's this whole element of right to play, sports, health. While NIPUN has really brought in the numeracy and the literacy aspect to the center stage, there is this entire integration with early years and health in that. I mean, we are actually at the field level facing a lot of issue in terms of resilience building and mental health and engagement of parents out there. So how on earth do we really even expect that children would start suddenly, performing on literacy and numeracy and those aspects? So I think as implementers, it becomes critical for this convergence. And that's one big C in our CSR strategy also, that this convergence has to happen, because the first 3 years, so as to say, where the entire, or maybe -9 to 3 years, if I were to put it correctly, or even the adolescent period. So there's this entire focus on health. We still have data from most of the communities that we work that even complete immunization is less than 50%. Vitamin A supplementation is less than 10%. Deworming is less than 10%. So just imagine the population which is all going to come into NIPUN and who we are going to actually work with. So there is, and that's where you rightly said, the entire integration and convergence of several ministries and not compartmentalizing the child into several segments and then all of us start working on just those two bits and over expecting from children, because that creates a kind of pressure which at that age may not be the right thing to do. And that's a reminder, because when we work as CSRs, at least in HCL, we have an integrated community development approach as a strategy. We look at the holistic development. We look at several aspects, sports, art. And I think the language bit, which has been spoken about, and also I think one of the prime reasons how LLF won this grant, and the entire saying, as I always say from Rabindranath ji, that language, mother tongue, and mother's milk, they kind of go together. There is another aspect of culture. So culture and language go so much hand in hand, and that somewhere, as implementers of NIPUN, by the time they kind of understand in these 3 years, my worry is that the mission may kind of just start collating the lakshyas and the targets. So we at CSR, we kind of, being maybe corporates and target oriented and impact measurement and targets, etc., I still see that as a country, it will take us time to understand the needs of a young child and then integrate and then start getting results on numeracy and literacy. So I'm a little worried at this stage in terms of the pressure that might just boil down on the young child. And as implementers, we really need to be taking those aspects in our planning and implementation plans where we move together. And the last point is this timetable. I mean, we are working so much at the grassroots, and when I look at children, I mean, be it online and offline, online was a disaster, I must tell you. I mean, it was so much of pressure on parents and children and everyone. And then offline also, how are we going to tailor make it for these young children? And so that's where I think leadership is needed. Higher level of capacity building kind of requirements are there. It is critical that masses, NIPUN, maybe everybody in this room is quite aware of, but you go outside, you talk to a lot of people working in the field of development, they wouldn't have so far heard about it. So there is a need to unpack what is it that we are looking at, especially when it comes to CSR partnerships and for corporates also to make it rupee measurable. I'm sorry if I posed more questions than answers, but these are automatic nuances which need to be resolved before we kind of, start piloting quite a bit of it. Yeah.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think many of us know about the NIPUN guidelines that we have. However, in my quiz 2 days ago, I came 20th. It was a bit worrying because I thought I knew what NIPUN Bharat was about. So our mandate is to go back and फिर से वो पूरे सारे guidelines पढ़ के आओ, क्योंकि अगर निपुण करना है तो सारी details पता होनी चाहिए. On a slightly more serious note, Ujjwal, if I can ask you, CSR is one part. We can see that across the board for this new mission, more has been done than perhaps we were doing before. Like Manish ji said, लक्ष्य है, फ्रेमवर्क है, ये चीजें अनाउंस करने के पहले बन गई. We see a lot of fast movement even during the COVID time that NCRT and others have brought out, to help what is going on. As corporate India and outside of CSR, I recently read a book by Naushad Forbes where he makes a big push to say that corporate India needs to do much more. Now, at some level, I don't know how we calculate how many children are currently in this 3 to 8 year age group. But अगर हम मान के चले कि about 25 million in each single year age group, we have something like 120, 150 million children. and इनके साथ जो अभी होता है will decide actually the future of the country for the next 50 years. Now, when we look at this in this manner and we see that there is a new policy, the new policy is at least being backed by quite a lot of energy, do you see corporate India outside of CSR? I think CSR में बहुत कुछ हो रहा है, but outside of CSR, which is a small portion of what corporate India can do, how do you see corporate India reacting, or how do you wish corporate India would look at opportunities and challenges? This is a question, by the way, outside the course. Okay. But assessment तब होने वाला नहीं है. हाँ, Anita Karwal said it's all going to be observation and conversation. So, right.
Thanks for the question, Rukmini ji. And let me start with commending LLF actually for completing this important milestone actually of 7 years. I think Language Learning Foundation has been a very important organization actually in shaping the larger narrative of the salience of language learning actually, particularly the issues with pedagogy of language in the country. And I think it's a matter of honor to be part of this important event actually today. So thanks so much for that. Now, this is a difficult question again, as I'm again trying to answer as to what is it that the larger corporate India should actually be looking at. One, I feel that the worlds are very different. The world of market-based approach actually to kind of delivering of products and services is very different from the world of the social science, the world of education, where we are kind of first of all, the children are not our customers over there. The teachers are not customers. We are talking about a very different relationship of state with an individual. A very different relation. The nature of relationship of a state with a child, the state with the teacher, and the administrators is of a very different, and even citizens at large is very different as compared to how a corporate kind of needs to, I would say, operate in a larger market space as such, because the principles are fundamentally different. However, I would say that there are a lot of learnings which can translate from the way corporates approach their work. And I guess those are informing the way, the efforts actually of when we use the word, say, systems thinking as such. I guess it has actually, it has emerged actually from the way businesses have actually been managed. And it's an idea also which comes from the West largely. Or as, kind of performance management, or as efficiency. These are all terms which have emerged actually from the corporate kind of larger realm as such. But I guess they have relevance whether we are kind of running a trust, a society, or a school actually, because the resources are always going to be that much, and one would always want to maximize what we are able to attain through those resources. So that ways, I would say that there are a lot of learnings that one can draw in terms of the way corporates approach their work as such, although the relationships are of qualitatively very, very different nature. So that's what I would say. And the other point is actually that I think when I said that the worlds are very different, I would say that if you ask me mentally, any corporate entity which is, say, manufacturing automobiles, I don't think so it would be able to relate to the world of that teacher in Khunti in a remote village who has to struggle, wait for a bus which comes at, say, only a certain hour in the morning, take that bus and reach the school, and has to get out because there is a bus which comes only, or else he or she will need to walk for 15 kilometers to get. So I think the worlds are very, very different, and they are not even understood mutually so well. So that way, I would say that there is certainly a chasm between the world of the corporate and the world of public schooling systems actually. But yeah, thanks to CSR and thanks to a lot of well-meaning, I would say, corporates who bring with, and I think a lot of them are there also in this forum, they have made that conscious effort to kind of engage with that problem. And then I guess that is how some of these, we had these interactions even in the previous panel. So those have basically emerged, I guess, from the conscious effort that a corporate entity or certain sets of corporates have actually tried to make to really understand what really is the nature of the problem, and therefore what should be its essential response. So yeah. I don't know whether I was clear, but this is how it is
No, definitely. Yeah. A different set of questions that I thought maybe we should think about. In the last couple of years, our minds have been preoccupied with many things: pandemic, disaster, पैसे आएंगे कि नहीं, कभी भी स्कूल खुलेंगे कि नहीं, all kinds of things. But in some ways, the launch of the new education policy at this time, and the fact that we have a new school year, almost anybody who is going to first or second or even third standard right now, or coming to Anganwadi, is coming with a completely fresh slate. बिल्कुल मतलब फैमिली के गोदी से उठ के अभी वो स्कूल आ रहे हैं, and that experience is also very fresh. I mean, most schools have opened for primary grades only some few weeks or months ago. Now, I've always been curious, and now I have a captive audience here, so I can ask that when you look back, the launch of all of this new initiatives at this time, how do you see it? Do you see this as a great opportunity? Do you see, agar it had been business as usual, schools running as they were, would it have been easier or more difficult to launch and excite people about NIPUN? Manish ji?
Yeah, well, it has been very exciting that this policy came at this point of time. Actually, during the COVID, when the schools were closed, people are aware, a lot of initiatives were taken by the central government, by state governments, by district level, by CSOs, by CSR. So everyone came together to actually mitigate the losses that could have been there. So it sort of mobilized everyone in a particular direction. It was like a warlike situation, and in a warlike situation, all of us get together and work together. So that was the interesting thing, and of course, if it was business as usual, then there would have been a little bit of despair or despondency if these new initiatives had not been there. So these initiatives, I think, have given a lot of hope and vision to people across the country that things are improving and things are going to be better. And we have something to look forward to. Some vision is there. So that is there, but of course, with the closure of the schools, I there definitely there has been gap. So if the schools were open when all these things were actually taken up or launched, it would have definitely made more impact because of the very real ground situation which has happened. For example, we were doing this foundational learning study, that is the for the foundational learning and the oral reading fluency. We are trying to do a benchmarking in Indian languages. We actually, at present, there is no study across the country in Indian languages which benchmarks the ORF for Indian languages. We only have studies of English or international studies. So we have done this foundational learning study towards the end of March and first week of April, and across 22 languages we have taken it up with the participation of nearly 1 lakh children of grade 3 and about 10,000 field investigators personally sitting with the children and doing that survey. And I visited one of the schools during that survey, and a small girl, she of course in class 3, she was very beautifully reading, and it was very heartening to see that. And I asked her that have you are in grade 3, so have you been to school earlier? When did you last come to school? So she very innocently said कि मैं एक बार बचपन में आई थी school. So that is the kind of thing, the psychology of the children ki now she's grown up and bachpan mein. So they have sort of, that some gap has been there in their mindset and their thinking. Besides that, the launch of these new initiatives definitely have given a lot of hope and have given a cut path forward as to what needs to be done and how it can be done. So I think that has been the positive factor of launch of these new initiatives and the national education policy during this pandemic times.
I think we are getting close to the end of at least this segment. So I thought maybe we can just conclude with almost everybody on the panel is saying that one of the big things that we have to do, and I think Manish ji aapne bhi bola, how do you take this message to every household? Gaurav was talking about the fact that everybody needs to be in the same place, on the same page. So if we can just from Sunisha, Nidhi and Ujjwal, one thought about what needs to be done more to really make this into a national mission, get this out into sort of everybody's head. What would be your one quick suggestion?
Again, out of course. Well, I think, yes, I completely agree that it has to be something that everybody owns and understands. And I think both the teacher as well as the parents are the key stakeholders of this, for this mission to be successful. Of course, the education administrators, as Anita ma'am mentioned, they're part of that enabling environment. So we have to kind of get to every teacher for her to be on board in terms of, because the change really has to happen in the classroom. The mission success really lies in if our classrooms were to change. And therefore, we have to, look at various ways through which we get teachers to become the key stakeholders of this mission. There will be challenges, there will be learning losses also when they start implementing something new, but they have to be supported as part of the whole adoption. And the second is get to the parents. Parents have to understand, parents have their own simple measures of, when they monitor their child's learning. मेरे बच्चे को अपना नाम लिखना आया या नहीं, उसको गिनती आती है या पहाड़े आते हैं या नहीं. I think we have to build on that and get them. And the COVID has shown us that they can be such important players as part of this. So we have to find all kinds of modalities of reaching them. And I really love the point that Pradeep ji made. We have to have these listening, Pramod ji, sorry, the listening platforms. I think that to me is really important. Listen to each other as part of this.
No, I think very relevant question, because we've come out of, I would say, I mean, it is a global disaster, and it has been heavy on children. So I think this is also a time, I would say an opportune time, but at the same time also a big threat. So there is this whole thing handled with care. And we always say, this term called Vatsalya in Hindi, they're coming, as you rightly said, they're coming from, families. So that bond has to be reestablished with the school system, that equilibrium between the parent, the child, and the teachers. That will be critical for the development of that child as she grows. So that's critical. And that in the whole, I would say, ambit of these lakshyas and targets, let's not just forget that, because otherwise it will really be bad for that child in the later stages. So mission mode is fine, but mission can always be revised and mission can always be revisited in terms of its approach and target. That's one. Secondly, let them come back to school first. Let them be happy. Let them establish that. And there are lots of ways of joyful learning. I mean, numeracy, literacy, I understand. But there's sports, there is play, there is recreation, and learning happens. And that's exactly what I think the NEP is talking about. So I think this sensitivity will be critical for the success, and then we can fast track it. So this 1 year where we focus on capacity building, where we focus on reestablishing the bond with the school, and then we fast track it. So let's not completely get lost in that pressure and transfer that to children. So that's my only.
And I think as Pramod ji said, कि हड़बड़ी मत करो. हाँ, thoughtfully चीज करने की जरूरत है. Ujjwal, your
Yeah, isme, Rukmini ji, my point would actually be that given the fact that the moment we call it a mission, it means that there is a certain energy and attention that is bearing, from a highest level actually on the program, which means that undoubtedly the administrators are going to be expected to deliver. Now, as they kind of they start, kind of realizing the sense of, pressure. If it translates into anxiety, then that anxiety is very likely to get, translated further downstream, and maybe at the diet level, at the respective CRC, BRC level, and it might I'm saying that's a threat of it, that it might distort the entire process of education. And I would say that is something that one has to be cognizant of. So I would say that on a more positive side, what does this change essentially imply at every stakeholder of this larger process of change? What does NIPUN mission mean actually for a diet lecturer who has only 4 faculty members as against 26 that should actually be in that diet? What does this change imply for a CRC who has to look after 15 or 20 schools, or for a teacher who's just a single teacher and there are 120 children in that school and she doesn't know when the next teacher is going to be appointed? It's an open-ended problem for her. Now, for all these people, this change will have a certain meaning and they will have to grapple with it. In the process of anxiety, if there are a lot of, kind of expectations from the higher ups, if they, just start filling in certain, frameworks, as was mentioned in the previous forum also, just for the sake of appearing better in the light of their administrators, then I guess, that is, I would say, the biggest threat that this kind of a nomenclature actually has, as far as large scale change in the country is concerned, because it's not an infrastructure replication program that we are talking about. It's a human resource intensive change where human resource at administrator level, at the teacher level, at the child level, that becomes the central point. And human change, or any change in a human being, I think is a very, very complex process. So I don't know whether a mission can really put its arm around that problem adequately. I really don't know. So it's like we all have to contribute towards that. And I think we are all doing it in good faith and with good intention. And I guess that's the whole idea of partnering with strong organizations, that, we are not going to get astray, led astray somewhere and realize that, it's already 2025 and what kind of damage have we done? So that should not be the case. That's the saving grace.
So since this is a celebration and it's a birthday, it's only appropriate that LLF should get a gift. आप लोगों ने सबने gift लाए हैं कि नहीं? So I thought that rather than having concluding remarks and summarizing, that I have a gift from Pratham to LLF. It's a 1-minute long gift, but usko dekh liya jaye. And I think that we need to visualize what this child, for example, who told Manish ji ki bachpan mein main school aayi thi, but she knows how to read. What does this feel like? Because the joy and the energy that you get out of जब बच्चे पढ़ने लगते हैं, उसका एहसास पूरे दुनिया को होना चाहिए. And I think there are many children in the country who already achieved this goal, and they can inspire the others. So I just thought that maybe this is just a 1-minute gift for LLF and for all of us who really want this to be available in every school. Now, let's hope the gift works. Okay. Yeah. The one that I sent you, whatever it is. हाँ. कोई दूसरा गिफ्ट ना दिखा दे.
Till it comes up, something very interesting thought came to my mind was, normally it is expected that we should be moving faster and doing things quickly. I mean, that is expected of the government, and also government is normally said to be like slow and going very gradual. But here it seems to be the other way around, where we are being asked to be slow and go for a gradual change, and probably, but I don't think we are moving that fast. Also, I think we should be a little faster, according to me. But that is quite an interesting thing to know, that we are not expected to go that fast.
We want to be invited here for the 12th birthday party, where we should be having a total.
Just want to read out. There was this letter, some of you may be already familiar with it. This was a letter an education administrator in New York upstate wrote to the teachers in her district. And she talked about that when schools reopen, where do we meet children? And just a few lines from that, and I think they're so appropriate since we all are talking about, learning loss. Where do we meet children? And she talks about, in our determination to catch them up, I fear that we will lose who they are and what they have learned during the pandemic. Why on earth are we trying to catch them up on? Uh, the models do not apply, the benchmarks no longer valid. The trend analysis have been disrupted. When children return to school, we will need to listen to them, let their stories be told. Their brains may have not focused on traditional school materials, but they did not stop. Meet children where they are. We do not need to hurry to fix kids. They're not broken. This will help achieve much beyond what achievement tests can measure. And I think it's a really thoughtful message. And I'm sure many of our teachers feel similarly.
That's very thoughtful, and in fact, we in the ministry, I mean, and in various communications and all, have we are avoiding the use of word learning loss, because that gives an impression that psychologically that something has been lost and not to be recovered ever. So we have stopped calling learning loss, and we are calling learning some interruption or some disruption has taken place. And we are trying to also, in the NAS, we have tried to measure what the gains could have been. So the NAS questionnaire also includes what the children have gained during this period. So I think that is quite relevant, and we are also trying to ease the children into schools through the Vidya Pravesh, through the reading campaigns, joyful reading, all those things. So that there is a softer landing.
Well, their resilience scores are better because they've spent more time.
Yes, yes.
So there are some technical issues with the gift. We should. Yeah. No, but we don't want to hold up the panel. So thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for totally being out of course, but on course as well. And it's really, really good. I think that this is a really important moment in our history, and that I think what I'm hearing is that at least here in this room, we are all on the same page. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir. Yes.